Welcome back to the She Lives with MS podcast. I'm your host, Michaela Michelle, and today we're talking about the unspoken elephant in the room, living with multiple sclerosis. And that word is grief. Now, most people think that grief equals funerals or people dying. But if you live with MS, grief is literally the big elephant that is in the room. Because grief is not just about death. It's about losing pieces of yourself, losing your independence, losing your plans for your life, and losing your old identity. Do you ever wake up missing who you used to be? Me too. And not long ago, I fell into one of the deepest depressions of my MS journey. And I was sitting across from my therapist, hysterically crying, broken, exhausted, and in a really dark place. And then she said something to me that shocked me, and it stopped me right in my tracks. She said, "Michaela, did you know that you are grieving?" Now, I thought grief was about death and dying or about going to funerals, but she was right. I was grieving the death of my former self. And then she introduced me to the Grief Rollercoaster. And then suddenly my feelings and just the darkness that I was in made sense. And the ups and downs that I was experiencing on this grief roller coaster wasn't because I was failing to cope. It was because I was grieving. And grief is something that you need to understand, that it is like being on a roller coaster. And I'm going to encourage you not to be afraid of it and to face it head on, especially if you have a really good therapist or a coach in your life that can help you. And in this journey of going through the grief and experiencing the grief and healing through the grieving process, I started journaling and talking to God. And I wanted to show you really quickly my journal. Where the heck did I put it? It was right here. It was right here. Here it is. So this is my journal. And as you can see, I journaled all of my feelings to God. I was crying. I was pissed off. I was in a really dark place. And journaling really helped me to process my feelings. I started sharing openly with my family about how I was feeling and sharing with them that I was on a grief roller coaster and I didn't know how to get off the roller coaster. And in a lot of those moments, I started praying more than I had ever prayed before. And that was the very first small step towards my healing journey. Because grief is a ride that no one warns us about. I never signed on to being on a grief roller coaster. But if you have MS, you're forced to get on that roller coaster. And with MS, you're strapped into the roller coaster almost permanently. And it's you have those moments where you're like, I want to get off this roller coaster, but you can't. And then there are some days where in the ride, okay, you're going really down, and that's your emotions going downwards. And then there are parts of the ride where you're coasting a little bit. And then there's the parts of the ride where you're going up the roller coaster. And then all of a sudden you're going crashing down. And that crashing down comes with feeling like you're blindsided, with sadness and with anger and with numbness and with brain fog and with neuropathy pain and with, oh my gosh, for me, it's a lot of incontinence and constipation and weird angry, hunger, angry. I don't even know what it is, but you just have these weird feelings. And being on that ride is brutal. But I'm going to ask you that you need to name this and say this out loud, because there's no way to get rid of the monster unless you name it. Now, the therapist that I was working with really helped me, and she explained to me that there's 3 different kinds of grief. The first is acute grief, which is like that first storm feeling that you feel right after you're being diagnosed, or right after a relapse happens. Like you're in the storm. It's like, whoa. That's acute grief. Then there's also complicated grief, is when that grieving feeling or that grief lingers and you feel stuck, no matter what you do, no matter how much you try to move, and no matter how much you try to do your wellness exercises, you just keep feeling stuck. That's called complicated grief. Then there's integrated grief, when the loss of your former self, it doesn't vanish, it doesn't go away, but it literally lays down roots in your story, giving you a different reality. Those 3 different types of grief, you need to understand that that's happening. And when you live with MS, you go through all 3 of those levels of grief simultaneously. And grief wears disguises. And it wears disguises that are called the following things. It disguises itself as fatigue. This fatigue that you cannot move your body or your mind out of. It also disguises itself as isolation, where you turn down invites because you don't want to answer questions when people ask you, so how are you feeling today? You don't want to answer those questions. And it also disguises itself as an identity crisis. And you're thinking to yourself, who am I? Who am I now? You look in the mirror and you say, who is that? And it also disguises itself as struggles with your relationship with God. And it causes you and forces you to ask God, why me? What did I do to deserve having MS? How do I even trust you again if my health keeps failing? But grief isn't your enemy. It really is the pathway to healing, believe it or not. Now, Jesus reminds us, and I don't want to get all Jesus-y or churchy or Bible-y on you, but Jesus reminds us in Matthew 5:4 when he says, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Mourn the loss of your former self and then give it to God, because you can't carry that alone. Now, for me, comfort came through praying and through journaling. If you don't have a journal, go to the Dollar Tree and buy yourself a $1.25 journal and start journaling your feelings. This is what has helped me and what has saved me. And also lean on the people around you. Let people in your life know the struggle that you're going through. Include them in your struggles so that they understand. And then if you don't have one, get one. A coach and a therapist. If you don't have one, let me know and I can help you, support you with that. And if you don't have a therapist, find a therapist in your area that can help you with the long-term chronic illness. And then through gentle self-care, rest, drinking water, moving your body, you're going to start to feel a little bit more joy in those little things. Grief with MS is messy. And it is not a linear thing. You don't start at one point and then it's a straight line to the healing journey. You're going to be on a grief roller coaster the entire time. And some days you're strong. And other days you are literally on the floor hysterically crying. But grief doesn't have the last word. And neither does MS. God does. Lord, give every person listening to this podcast episode have the courage to face being on this grief roller coaster, and give her the courage to face her grieving journey. Wrap her in comfort, Lord, and remind her that she's never alone. Amen. If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe to the She Lives with MS podcast, or follow me on Instagram at She Lives with MS and at Christian Spiritual Formation. Let's walk this road together with hope and with Jesus right at the center. Thank you for being here on the She Lives with MS podcast, and I will see you and hear you and experience you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.